Hi guys, what's up? It's DomK6505 here, and today I'm doing my third games programming tutorial in Unity before moving into Unreal. And I'm going to start right away. I'm going to be showing you loops this episode. So I'm going to create a new C# script. I'm going to call it Shoot3 Loops Tutorial, because I already have a copy named Shoot3 Loops, and it messed up on me last time because it had two of the same script. And I made that in my Unity content browser, and I've opened it here. Okay, so I'm going to start with for loops, and there are two kinds of for loop. There are fors and for each. So for loops are basically when you have kind of an integer stated. I think they only work with integers. You can use them with other things, but integers are kind of the easiest one to work with. I don't really know what other cases you would bother to use them in. But I'm going to start by creating a integer, and I'm going to call it number of enemies. I'm going to set it equal to 3. And then in my start method, which obviously runs at the start of the game, I'm going to write for, and here's where you start setting it up. And fors are a bit weird to set up. So basically what you do is you declare a value that it's going to use basically to check against a variable. So it's going to be an integer, and I'm going to call it I. Just because it's a standard value. Basically, if you declare a variable in a method, so obviously this integer is made in this method, this one is made outside it. This one persists throughout the whole class, but this one here, this int I, is only used within this for loop. If I made one here, that would be used just in this method. So I hope you kind of get that. These are used in the method, these are used in the entire class, and these here are just used in the certain one that you are kind of working in. Basically, wherever you declare it, it'll only be used within those braces, sort of thing. Okay, so int is I, and we're going to set the value to 0. And then you're going to want to check what condition it's checking against. It's a really weird one to describe. What condition are you checking against in this case? So when I is less than number of enemies, and I hope you kind of get how that's laid out. And then what you're going to do to I for each one, for each time that I is less than enemies, what you're going to do to I. So in this case, we're going to increment it. So I'm going to quickly close that up and come back to it. So declaring a temporary variable called I and setting its value to 0. Checking I against the number of enemies, and then for every time that I is less than the number of enemies, we're going to increment I and carry on. And then we're going to print creating enemy number, and then we're going to close that off. And what you can actually do is when you're making strings to print, you can actually then just add on other values. So in this case, we're going to add on I. And then you could add on, just for neatness, I'm going to add on a full stop at the end. And then if I come into Unity, wait for it to load up and stop giving me errors, and I'm going to remove these two from before and add on the loops. And with any luck, it should print creating enemy number 1, 2, and 3. Okay, that's because the other one is actually still working on my player. I'm just going to remove that too. So you can see creating an enemy number 0, enemy number 1, and enemy number 2. And the reason it's done that is because I set enemy number, the number of enemies, to be 3. I then checked as long as I is less than, so it couldn't do it when, obviously, I is 3, because only if I had put less than or equal to. Which is not hard to do. If I then do if I is less than or equal to the number of enemies, however, that would be incorrect, and I'll show you why. Because if I now come back to Unity, you can see that it's created enemy number 0, enemy number 1, enemy number 2, and enemy number 3. That's because when you are counting and programming, the count starts from 0. 0 classes as a value. So say that you want 3 enemies, you would set the number of enemies to 3, but you need because it starts from 0, the actual value it spawns will be 1 more. So coming back into the code, as you saw before, you want to check that I is less than the number of enemies, because then obviously it can spawn 3 enemies, but then I will be equal to 3, so it can't spawn a 4th. It's a really weird one to get your head around. I hope you kind of understand how I mean. And that's actually moved slightly out of place. I don't know how that happened. I don't know if I did that before. But yeah, coming back to it, you can now see, again, enemy number 0, enemy number 1, and enemy number 2. So they are for loops. And it's really laying that out weirdly. It keeps shifting it around. I don't know why. Okay, anyway. So hopefully you kind of get how fors work. Now, for each are good when you have, pardon me, when you have an array of values. So the for loop is good when you have just set a value, for example, of enemies that you wanted to spawn, but you didn't want to make, obviously, an array of items. However, when you have an array where you are setting each value manually, that's when for each comes into it. So I'm going to make an array of strings, and the way to make it into an array is just to put, after the variable kind, you just put 2 square brackets, open and close. You're then going to name it, so I'm going to call it strings, and I'm going to then put, to initialize it, you put equals new, and then the variable kind, and then in the square brackets again, you put how many values you want it to have. So, in this case, I'm going to set it to be 2. Again, remembering that I want it to hold 3 values in this case. So, value 0, value 1, and value 2. Okay? And then, in the start function, I'm going to write string, and then I'm going to put square brackets 0, and that means the value that is at the 0 position in, sorry, it doesn't want to be string, it wants to be strings. So the array name followed by the position. So the value at 0 I want to be equal to first string. The value at position 1 I want to be equal to second string. And the value at position 2 I want to be equal to third string. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to write for each, and that's my for each loop. And then what you're going to be checking, so in this case I'm checking the amount of strings and name the temporary variable, so I'm going to call it for string item. So for every string in strings, I'm going to print item. So for every string in the strings array which we made, we're going to print that specific string. And if I come back into Unity, wait for it to load, wait for it to bear with me. If I now click play, you should see in the bottom left, ooh, array index is out of range. In this case, I may actually be a little bit wrong. Variable item is assigned, but it is never used. And again, this is a very strange case of Unity messing around with the layout. It keeps mucking that up for me. Sorry. Right. Hopefully that should now work. There you go. That's actually another example of me messing it up. I love it when that happens. So when it comes to arrays, you actually set this value here. When you set the length of the array, that is actually how many slots it has to have. It isn't, that doesn't count from 0, so it has 3 positions. The index count then just starts from 0. So 3 positions, first position index is 0, second position index is 1, third position index is 2. Bear that in mind, my bad. Sorry about that. Okay, so they're the 2 kinds of for, and now I'm going to cover a while loop. And they are basically what they sound like. It's while this, do this. I am going to quickly, I'm going to bring back my number of enemies. So int number of enemies is equal to 3. And then I'm going to, in my start function, I'm going to do while number of enemies is greater than 0. Print spotted enemy. And then detract from that by 1. So hopefully it should now print spotted enemy 3 times. If all goes to plan, which it probably won't do. Spotted enemy 3 times. There you go, nice and easy. While I'm going to change this to work off a Boolean value instead. I don't know if I actually switched over to Unity there, sorry. I'll quickly do it again just to demonstrate. It prints spotted enemy 3 times. I didn't know if I'd hopped over and shown you that. I keep forgetting to change. Okay, so now I'm going to make a Boolean. Should print. I'm going to set it equal to false. And now I'm going to check while should print is true. Then print printing. And I'm going to put this in the update function actually. This is mainly not to be used in update really. They're meant to be used for other things actually. That doesn't really... I'm going to leave that. Mainly use them for what I did before. Kind of as another version of a for loop. Pardon me. It's not the best to use them in the start function. Alright, so here I'm going to now finish up by doing do while loops. And do whiles, I kind of like whiles, except they can be used better for booleans, I believe. So if I do a do, and that's all you need to write for now, you just need to then open it with curly braces and close it. And I'm going to print printing here. So while loops should be used in the start function, really, and do whiles can be used in the update. And then I'm going to put while should print is equal to true. So do this, and then while, and then the condition that you're checking. So if I now hop into Unity, I'm going to quickly add on a bit of code here to change the value of that boolean. So I'm going to if input.get key down, and I'm going to use keycode.b again. So if you press B, then should print even is equal to the negative of should print, like you saw me do, I think, in the last video. Okay, and if I come down here, so it's printing at the moment. If I press B, it should stop. You can see that it's no longer printing. 172. Oh, I'm not in the Unity editor. Sorry about that. I keep doing that. And now Unity has crashed. So you can see that do whiles also crash when you put them in the update function. That is not good. Okay, don't do that. But anyway, you can, although it's breaking when I put it in the update function, you can see how each of the loops is used. It didn't quite go to plan, but oh well. I'm going to call this one here. To be fair, for and for each is mainly the ones that I use. I don't use while loops, I don't use do whiles, hence why I'm not really used to the fact that they are breaking on me at this point. But yeah, I'm going to come back with, and the last video is going to, oh, sorry, not the last video. The next video is going to be the last in this little bit of the series, because after this I'm going to be moving into Unreal 4. But next I'm going to do a bit of basic programming to show you like how I would go about making a certain thing with what I've shown you. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed. I'm sorry that this video again ran on very long, at least a consistent, or about 15 minutes. I hope you tune in for the next one. I hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.